Please consider joining us on our website. You'll have access to Interesting Minds, crime series, and a tutorial so you can see how I do it. I can't guarantee you'll figure it out, but I will teach you how I see people.
But the mob reporting behavior does happen.
Yeah, it does.
It happens across the spectrum.
I'd have to assume it's going to be one direction. I can't imagine he would target vegans, but vegans would target him, right?
Well, he might. I mean, he doesn't, but
is he the kind of guy who's going to want to report to vegans and get them banned from Twitter? Or is he going to want to make fun of them?
He's going to make fun of them. Yeah.
They're going to target him to try and get him removed by exploiting the system that you guys have.
It may not be him, though. It could also be his followers. It's a really complicated world out there. So you don't, the motivations of why people mob report are different, and it's not always under someone's control.
It could even be other carnivore diet proponents.
Oh, that was very interesting. And go back to her control.
So you don't, the motivations of why people mob report are different, and it's not always under someone's control.
It's not always underneath someone's control. You need to be wary when someone sits there and offers information, and not in the sense of cautiousness or suspicion, but pay attention. She's offered up someone's control. It's not always someone's control. Well, who's talking about someone? And then you see that head shake in the positive, very excitable. Like, yeah, it's not always someone's control. It would say, from my point of view, looking at that, I was like, oh, since you get to see where it's all coming from and follow the strings that lead to wherever, you can see how it gets started, and you can see the someones. And then you can see sometimes that it's not always someone's. Just a little nugget.
Even be other carnivore diet proponents who are just jerks. They don't like him because he's getting all the love. People are weird.
Yeah,
but it's just
true.
The idea, though, is that it does kind of highlight a bit of a flaw in that it's good that someone can, like, 'cause you might see something awful, someone doxing someone or something like that, and then you can take that and report it, and then people can see it and get rid of it and minimize the damage that's done.
Well, there's another big problem here, in that, is the carnivore diet legitimately healthy? Is it a threat to your health? And if it is what is Twitter's responsibility in controlling that information? Right. So just to clarify, my opinion is, if he wants to be a proponent for the carnivore diet, let him. But you've got people on YouTube who are being deranked for certain beliefs about certain health issues that I don't agree with. And so one of the risks then is, we're coming towards a position where people think some ideas are better than others. Therefore, as a company, we're going to restrict access to certain information.
You mean like anti-vax?
Exactly.
People?
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to say is, at what point would you guys restrict someone from sharing false information about vaccines that could get someone hurt?
That is not a violation of Twitter's rules. No.
I think, I mean, I'd be interested to hear your ideas around this, but our perspective right now is around this concept of variety perspective. Like, are we encouraging more echo chambers and filter bubbles, or are we at least showing people other information that might be counter to what they see? And there's a bunch of research that would suggest that further emboldens their views. There's also research that would suggest that it at least gives them a consideration about what they currently believe. So,
well, you guys, go ahead.
Sorry, given the dynamics of our network being completely public, we're not organized around communities, we're not organized around topics. We have a little bit more freedom to show more of the spectrum of any one particular issue, and I think that's how we would approach it from the start. That said, we haven't really dealt much with misinformation more broadly across like these sorts of topics. We've focused our efforts on elections and mainly elections right now. Sometimes
you'll have people that speak so quickly in their body language, it's hard to keep up. And we're going to show just a few nuggets. We're not watching this whole thing, but I want you to see something. Now, remember, I've told you about Jack Dorsey. He's got a belief system. A belief system is not necessarily bad, but it can keep you ignorant. When he tells you they're not censoring people, he's talking about those that are considered normal, healthy people in his mind. He's categorized people that in his mind are extremists, Nazis, KKK people. They're in a different category. They're not people. So when you watch this, I'm going to try and point this out.
Misinformation more broadly across like these sorts of topics, we've
So he's gone into himself. We've made ourselves small.
Focused our efforts on elections.
And then we come up, bring our head down on elections. He's about to finish the word elections, and he gives that a point. You see that head sharpness. Elections.
Elections and mainly elections.
And then he looks over to the lawyer lady. I'm going to call her the lawyer lady. For validation, that's what we're doing. yeah, it's not just me. We're doing elections.
Elections right now.
And then the mouth comes back to the interviewer tight, and he's still staying small. So we've watched him on everything else. He's very loose, very comfortable in there. No stress. And then all of a sudden we get to what we're focusing on, elections. And we see a tightness. We see an outside stressor. Not only is that outside stressor there, we're also seeing him looking to his ally for that social comfort. Now, the social comfort, why does he need that for something? He's the CEO. This is just somebody in the lawyer department. It could have been anybody, but he needed an ally of a lower rank and just to get through that conversation. And it says, the normal human brain needs an ally when there's an outside force influencing it. And the ally is going to become whoever in the company is near them at that moment. We as a company are doing it for elections because of an outside influence. There's your first clue right there. There's an outside influence.
I'm frustrated because of the hypocrisy of when I see the flow of one direction, and then what I see are Republican politicians who, in my opinion, are just too ignorant to understand what the hell's going on around them. And I see people burning signs that say free speech. I see you openly saying we recognize the power of our platform and we're not going to abide by American norms. I see the manipulation of Twitter in violation of our elections. I see Democratic operatives in Alabama waging a false flag campaign using fake Russian accounts, and the guy who runs that company has not been banned from your platform. Even after it's been written by the New York Times he was doing this. So we know that not only are people manipulating your platform, you have rules that remove honest American citizens with bad opinions who have a right to engage in public discourse, and it's like you recognize it, but you like having the power. I'm not quite sure at what point.
So just to get back to my point, so you believe that Twitter should not have any rules about abuse and harassment or any sort of hate speech on the platform. That's your position.
Well, that's extremely reductive. I don't know. That may be too simplistic. The point I'm trying to make is,
but that is the point you're trying to make. You're asking us to comply with the U.S. law that would criminalize potential speech and put people in jail for it, and you're asking us to enforce those standards.
Well, I mean, if you incite death, that's a crime. You can go to jail for that. So at the very least, when you have people on your platform who've committed a crime and you don't ban them, I say, well, that's really weird. And then when you have people on your platform who say a bad, naughty word, you do ban them. I say, well, that's really weird. I mean, I've seen people get banned for tweeting an N to you. I understand what they're trying to do when they tweet letters at you, Jack. But they get suspended for it, and they get a threat. Like you can't. Let's talk about learn to code.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by that?
I haven't seen that. So what are they trying to do?
There are people who know that they can tweet a single letter, and the next person knows what letter they need to tweet. You see what I'm saying? So you'll see, one user will say N, the next user will put an I, the next user will put a G. Yes. And so they get suspended for doing so. And these are the people who are trying to push the buttons on the rules, right?
They get suspended for that?
Absolutely. So because that I think, but here's the thing. I think your team understands what they're doing. However, you get really dangerous territory if someone accidentally tweets an N and you assume they're trying to engage in a harassment campaign, which is why I said let's talk about learn to code.
But we do look at coordination of accounts.
Do you do that through direct messages?
I don't know about direct messages, but
So we're avoiding eye contact on the direct messages. This is from Jack. And then he's getting up and he's getting away.
Direct messages?
We don't read direct messages.
We don't read them unless someone reports a direct message to us that they have.
And then he's rescued by the lawyer. But that's not the interesting part. They do read direct messages, for crying out loud. This is not something that is covert. Everyone should know by now.
Received.
And so you read their direct message that they send to you?
So if you have a direct message and someone says something terrible and then you receive a death threat and you report that to us,
then you read it.
Then we would read it because you've reported it to us.
Does anyone in the company have access to direct messages other than that?
Only in the context, again, of reviewing reports that we receive.
Other than that, they're not accessible?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know what you mean. We're not reading them. We're not reading them.
Is it possible that someone could go into Tim's direct messages and just read his direct messages?
I don't think so.
So if Tim writes an N and I write an I and Jamie writes a G, can you go into our direct messages and say, hey, let's fuck with Jack and we're going to write this stuff out and we're going to do it and let's see if they ban us? You can't read that.
I don't think so. But
so if that's the case, how would you know if there was a concerted effort?
But I think what he's saying is if we do see those train of replies, then that is coordination.
You know what people are doing, right?
Yes.
The point I'm trying to make
is how do you prove it?
Well, I think beyond the N, Like, the first person to put the letter, you can't prove he did it, but everybody else you kind of can.
But I don't think we would.
Well, I can say this. I've been sent numerous screenshots from people. Screenshots can be faked. I recognize it, but I have seen people actually tweet, and then I've seen the tweet follow up.
Right after one letter, though?
Yeah, someone tweeted at you, someone decently high profile, like a big YouTuber, tweeted an N at you and then got like a 12-hour suspension.
I didn't see it.
But let's talk about learn to code, right? And why are people being suspended for tweeting hashtag learn to code?
Yep. We did some research on this.
Yes, we did some research on this.
We did some research on this. Yes, we did some research on this. Neither one of them want to look at the interviewers. Learn to code. They're going to explain it in this, so I won't do it. He won't look at him. He looks to her. She won't look at them. She looks to self. Again, you need that ally. He's made himself small. There's an outside stressor.
So there was a situation, I guess about a month ago or so, where...
and then we're looking everywhere but at the people you're talking to. She had no problem through this interview, except from when she was, obviously fabricating. But for right now, she had no problem looking at them. I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to lawyer speak on other things, but I'm going to answer your questions and look at you. And right now, we've seen two individuals on the same side of the coin who's having a hard time with this.
A number of journalists were receiving a variety of tweets, some containing learn to code.
And we're wiggling a lot more than we were earlier. She likes to dance in her chair. She does that quite a bit. I think she gets excitable with arguments. But now she's also moving her body. She's leaned over, and now she's anchored, still dancing in the chair, not giving very good eye contact.
Some containing a bunch of other coded language that was wishes of harm. These were thousands and thousands of tweets being directed at a handful of journalists. And we did some research, and what we found was a number of the accounts that were engaging in this behavior, which is tweeting at the journalists with this either learn to code or things like Day of the Rope and other coded language, were actually ban evasion accounts. That means accounts that had been previously suspended. And we also learned that there was a targeted campaign being organized off our platform to abuse and harass these journalists.
That's not true.
That's not true. I will give Tim, I haven't said it, but he did really well. The one thing when it comes to reading body language is if the question isn't asked, the argument isn't put forth, you will not see the body's reaction. The fact that he's literally throwing the hard questions, the hard facts, the hard arguments at them and forcing the mind to go there, then we can see. And what we're starting to see is there is an outside stressor. There is an outside entity in the mix here, and they're not saying anything about it. They're lawyers speaking around it. They're avoiding it. They're looking for allies within the company to cover it up, but there is an outside entity in the mix.
The thing, an activist who works for NBC wrote that story and then lobbied you. You issued an official statement, and then even the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller got a suspension for tweeting learn to code at the Daily Show.
So I have never talked to anybody from NBC about this issue, so I'm not sure.
So they report it. Don't misrepresent me. They report it. The narrative goes far and wide amongst your circles. Then all of a sudden you're seeing high-profile conservatives tweeting a joke getting suspensions.
So again, some of these tweets actually contained death threats, wishes of harm, other coded language that we've seen to mean death to journalists. So it wasn't...
When you see her keep switching that way because one person is talking to her, and that's the argument from Tim, and she keeps going back to the other person who is softer towards her, obviously he's not giving her the body language that says, I believe you. If he was, she'd focus more on him, but she's switching back and forth constantly. Does anybody believe what's coming out of my mouth? It's not me. And then we see the avoidance of eye contact.
About just the learn to code. It was about the context that we were seeing.
Come on, that's just not true. That's just not true. The editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller was suspended for tweeting nothing but hashtag learn to code.
So, Tim, can I finish what I was saying?
Yeah.
So we were looking at the context, and what was happening is there were journalists receiving hundreds of tweets. Some had death threats, some had wishes of harm, some just learned to code. And in that particular context, we made a decision. We consider this type of behavior dogpiling, which is when all of a sudden individuals are getting tons and tons of tweets at them. They feel very abused and harassed on the platform.
Can we pause this? Because this is super confusing for people who don't know the context. The learn to code thing is in response to people saying that people that are losing their jobs, like coal miners and truck drivers and things like that, could learn to code. It was almost like in jest initially. Or if it wasn't in jest initially, it was so poorly thought out as a suggestion that people started mocking it, right? Correct?
So
Is this correct?
the first stories that came out were simply like, can miners learn to code? It was
coal miners, right?
And the hashtag learn to code is just a meme. It's not even necessarily a conservative one, though you will see more conservatives using it.
But it was people are using it to mock how stupid the idea of taking a person who's uneducated, who's in their 50s, who should learn some new form of vocation, and then someone says learn to code, and so then other people, when they're losing their job or when something's happening, people would write learn to code because it's a meme.
Well, not even necessarily. I would just characterize learn to code as a meme that represents the elitism of modern journalists and how they target certain communities with disdain.
Okay.
So to make that point, there are people who have been suspended for tweeting something like, "I'm not too happy with how BuzzFeed reported the story. Hashtag learn to code." Right, making representation of these people are snooty elites who live in ivory towers. But again, this is a meme that has nothing to do with harassment. But it's some people might be harassing somebody and might tweet it. Why would we expect to see, even still today, I'm still getting messages from people with screenshots saying I've been suspended for using a hashtag. And the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, right? He quote tweeted a video from the Daily Show with hashtag learn to code, and he got a suspension for it.
So why learn to code? Why is that alone so egregious?
And I don't think it is so egregious. I think
is it
that's
just
a
something that
background.
got stuck in an algorithm?
So she's still dancing in her chair. She's made herself small. And that little short spell of when they went to her, she scoots in. She's making herself small. She's hiding. She doesn't have a hole. She doesn't have a pole to hide behind, but she's got a microphone. She quit looking at Jack. Jack looks to her for his social ally in that company. She doesn't have anyone to look at for a social ally to give her more strength. There's that outside stressor.
No, it was, again, a specific set of issues that we were seeing targeting a very specific set of journalists. And it wasn't just the learn to code. It was a couple of things going on. A lot of the accounts tweeting learn to code were ban evaders, which means they've previously been suspended. A lot of the accounts had other language in them, or tweets had other language like day of the brick, day of the rope, oven ready. These are all coded meanings for violence against people.
Right.
People who were receiving this were receiving hundreds of these in what appeared to us to be a coordinated harassment campaign. And so we were trying to understand the context of what was going on and take action on them. Because again, I don't know, Joe, if you've ever been the target of a dogpiling event on Twitter, but it is not particularly fun when thousands of people or hundreds of people are tweeting at you and saying things. And that can be viewed as a form of harassment. It's not about the individual tweet. It is about the volume of things that are being directed at you.
No, I understand.
And so in that particular case, we made the judgment call, and it is a judgment call, to take down the tweets that were responding directly to these journalists that were saying learn to code, even if they didn't have a wish of harm specifically attached to them because of what we viewed as coordinated attempt to harass them. And again, like I was saying, some of the other signals and coded language. And we were worried that learn to code was taking on a different meaning
I understand what you're
in
saying.
that particular context.
So, but in and of itself, though.
So you see, I understand. He's becoming softer to her in that context. And she herself gives him more and more eye contact. Oh, much more open towards him. She's still hiding. She's still trying to make herself small, but she's opening up a little bit more to him. The softness is there. Oh, he's seeing it from our point of view. I'll soften up.
It still seems like there's alternative meanings to learn to code. It still could be used, as Tim was saying, to mock elite, snooty.
Speak truth to power.
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
I agree with you. So it's really about the context of what was happening in that situation and all those other things. I think in a very different situation.
I think that should also tell you something there. Speak truth to power. She didn't have disgust in that. She also didn't look directly at him when she said that, which goes back to that underlying stressor, the underlying entity that they're not talking about. Speak truth to power. Don't give good eye contact. Don't look at that, because that power I still deal with. It's watching somebody with their hands tied. Can't talk about it. Can't fight against it. Granted, their political ideology or the way they want the world to be may not match up with everyone else's, but they're not your true enemy.
We would not take action on that.
Okay. But doesn't that seem like you're throwing a blanket over a very small issue?
I think
Because
it
learn to code in itself is very small. The blanket is cast over racism. The blanket is cast over this all the other horrible things that are attached to it. But the horrible things that are attached to it are the real issue. This learn to code thing is kind of a legitimate protest in people saying that these minors should learn to code. That's kind of preposterous.
Well, the first articles weren't mean. It was just
Right.
Learn to Code kind of identified you have these journalists who are so far removed from middle America that they think you can take a 50-year-old man who's never used a computer before and put him in
Right.
you know. The stories I think were legitimate.
Yes.
But the point more so is it was a meme. The hashtag, the idea of Learn to Code condenses this idea, and it's easy to communicate, especially when you only have 280 characters, that there is a class of individual in this country. I think you mentioned on, was it Sam Harris, that these liberal journalists only follow each other?
Yeah,
And
in the run up to the 2016 elections.
yeah. And so, I mean,
And he's still making himself small, which after this long of being on the podcast, you shouldn't be unless there's talking points that you want to hide from. These journalists only follow each other. Well, yeah, and he's staying out of it. There you go, people. My next prediction is we're going to find out who is the puppet master out of all of these social medias. Some of it's already come out. Most of you have been paying attention. That governments are. Oh, but I guarantee you it's a little bit smaller than just a broad word of government behind this. If you like it, please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.